What did your parents blame you for that turned out to be their own fault? 1. When I was 13, I begged my mom to let me go stay at a friend's house. Her brother was sick, and I ended up catching the flu from him. My dad was fighting congestive heart failure, though I didn't know it at the time. When I caught the flu, I passed it to him, which turned into pneumonia and hastened his death. In her grief, my mother told me it was my fault he died, that if I hadn't caught the flu, Dad would still be alive. I lived with that guilt for years, feeling as if I had murdered my dad. Years later, after my mother died, I found out from my brother that Dad had worked on our pasture fence in the rain, already having the flu. I'd caught the flu from him, and it turned into pneumonia afterward. But it was the broken fence in the rain, not me. Our mother never took back blaming me. She also told me she couldn't love my daughter because she wasn't perfect. She has Down syndrome and leukemia. I did not attend her funeral. 2. One day when I was in high school, I arrived home to discover several mostly empty bottles of alcohol from my mother's liquor cabinet sitting out on the kitchen counter. Upon hearing me enter the house, my mother angrily stomped into the kitchen to demand an explanation about why her booze was missing. I had absolutely no clue, but she wouldn't believe that my brother had denied drinking her booze, so therefore it must have been me. My mother threw a tantrum trying to get me to confess, which included yelling, screaming, hitting, punching, and throwing things at me. Then she started hurling other punishments at me. I was grounded. Any of my personal possessions that she didn't like, such as music she hated, was confiscated, and many of them were smashed, destroyed, and thrown into the garbage in front of my face. Then there were chores. I could expect to do nothing but clean from the moment I entered the house until I had to go to bed, until she felt I had learned my lesson. As it turned out, neither my brother nor I had anything to do with the disappearing alcoholic spirits. About 3 weeks later, one of her friends, let's call her Jan, popped in for a visit. I was mopping the kitchen at the time. Jan chuckled at seeing me mop and made a comment about how her kid never cleans. She asked my mother what her secret was. My mother told her about the missing alcohol and that I was being punished. Jan's face nearly hit the floor, mouth agape. She reminded my mother that they had drunk the booze together during her last visit. About a month prior to this new revelation that I was in fact telling the truth, my mother very calmly stated, "Oh, that's right, I forgot." Then turned to me and said, "As soon as you're done with the floor, you can stop with the chores for now. You're not grounded anymore." And that was that. Of course, my mother never apologized to me. 3. I was 14 and my half-sister was 8. A neighbor, a serial pedophile, raped all 6 of his daughters and wife beat her, raping my sister. My mother said it was my fault. The next day, I saw his car coming down the street and ran out in front of it, making him stop. I yelled at him and threatened to kill him if he ever touched my sister again. Who knows what I was thinking for years. My mother also said it was my fault that my father left us when I was a year old. I found out later he never wanted kids. She started telling me this when I was about 12. After we arrived in California in 1968, we were immediately thrown into poverty. Afterward, my mother called us ungrateful bitches. I was relentlessly bullied in the California schools I attended. It stopped when I dropped out. My mother said it was my fault I was bullied. She was fond of doling out blame. After my grandfather committed suicide in 1966, my mother told me, a 9-year-old, that it was my grandmother's fault that he did it. 4. My parents blamed me when a stalker found out which school I went to. This happened when I was 9. My friends and I made accounts on Google by lying about our age. We posted pictures and other things. Then a stalker showed up at my school looking for me. My parents found out I was on Google Plus and blamed me. When the police interrogated the guy, he found my school. On my mom's Facebook post, she took a picture of me and my friend in our school uniforms. Our uniforms had a patch with our school's name and logo. She posted the picture on her Facebook to friends. The guy made a fake account weeks before and somehow my mom accepted his friend request. So, he saw the picture.